UNSRC, Enlightenment Society, and the International Day of Yoga Committee at the United Nations. We're here today with our special event, with our book launch, Our Moment of Choice. We've been listening to our good friend, Paul Luftenager. And many of you know Paul Luftenager and his music because he's been with us for many special days that we've celebrated. The International Day of Peace, the International Day of Yoga, International Women's Day. He's been such a great friend. We'll hear more from his album, Seeds of Peace, later as we close. But I just like to show you the beautiful cover and to acknowledge him because he's been such a great friend and always says yes to helping us promote our events. For those of you who are just joining, the UNSRC is the UN Staff Recreation Council Enlightenment Society. And it's been a staff club, much like the photography club or the ski club, for decades, for over 60 years. And the mission and goals of the Enlightenment Society is to inspire, inform, and to really uplift the spirit of the United Nations, the staff, and all the work that goes on for the mission and the goals of the UN to create a better world for everyone. The International Day of Yoga Committee at the United Nations not only promotes 21 June as World Yoga Day, but it really shows how yoga is experienced in its fullness and richness in the United Nations and how it's experienced by the accredited NGOs to the United Nations, particularly through the special projects that help people around the world on the ground in their daily lives. It's my great pleasure today to have all of you join us because we have a very special event. And I am just so thankful that we have such an extraordinary group of friends who have come together to be with all of you today. We know how things are going on in the world, and it's a very difficult situation. We know that there's been a move away from multilateralism, and we know how with COVID-19, we're experiencing a global health pandemic. And on top of that, that's created various consequences, increasing economic inequality, many different kinds of social consequences, including, as the Secretary General spoke about, an alarming increase in violence across the board, an increase, what's been known now as a shadow pandemic of violence against women and children, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, all kinds of situations that have been exacerbated for many of these conditions that have come together. And many people are just feeling hopeless. They're wondering, what is this about? Where is my place? What's happening in the world? Who am I? All of these kinds of questions. It's my great privilege to be able to present to you today this very powerful book that is the newest book by the Source of Synergy Foundation, Our Moment of Choice. And underneath it, it is Visionaries, Evolutionary Visions, and Hope for the Future. So our moment of choice is something that we will be exploring today in terms of what does that mean? How is that relevant? How is that relevant for the United Nations? How is that relevant for the work of the United Nations in line with its mission and goals? How is that relevant to the underlying principles? Does that feed the United Nations? How can we bring continued planetary transformation that this institution has been bringing all these years? I'd like to say that we have an all-star cast. We do. We have people here who are just the leading thought leaders around the world and the leading people who have been involved with conscious evolution. So it's a very special treat, and I'm thrilled that we can have our program with them and that we're all together at this time. So I want to start with our program and say that we'll be hearing from many of the people who are involved with this project, who are involved with Source of Synergy, with the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, but who have also been involved with the UN, who know the UN and who love the United Nations and what that means and hold its highest ideals. So I would like to give the floor to our very first presenter, someone who invited me to be on the board of the Source of Synergy Foundation some years and years ago. So our first speaker is Diane Williams, and I'd like to share a little bit about Diane. There's so much to talk about when we talk about Diane Williams, and you could see the quote there. But Diane is the founder and president of the Source of Synergy Foundation. She has been the initiator of many projects, including the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. She has served as the founding chairperson of the NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concerns at the UN, a committee that many of us know for many years. The Enlightenment Society has partnered with CSVGC for the Week of Spirituality, for the Sunas. And it's been so critical, I think, to moving the agenda of the UN from a spiritual perspective and supporting those underlying goals and values that we find in the UN Charter, that we find in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Diane has been the recipient of the Spirit of the UN Awards, the Golden Rule, and the PEMAC Peace Awards. And she is just full of love and full of light. She is so light and has just an incredible spirit of laughter and joy. So it's my great honor to invite Diane.
Thank you so much, Denise. That's so kind of you. It's so wonderful to be here today with so many dear friends. And thank you so much, Denise, for inviting me and my fellow contributors of our Moment of Choice to be part of this special program. And Denise, I just want to share how much I truly admire you. You have been such a shining example of a yogini that assumes many forms, including the chair of the International Day of Yoga Committee, lawyer, daughter, beloved colleague, and friend. And in each form, you bring an incredible amount of commitment, creativity, passion, spiritual power, deep insight, and so much love that inspires the spiritual well-being of so many. And the impact you have made and will continue to make is profound. And I know we all honor you for your unwavering dedication to the highest good. Also, I want to acknowledge Becky. She's done so much to help prepare for this program. So Becky, we love you and thank you. And I also wish to acknowledge all of the amazing members of the International Day of Yoga Committee and the UN Staff Recreation Council's Enlightenment Society for hosting us today, and for the commitment and dedication each of you bring to supporting so many and having access to spiritual knowledge and the pursuit of enlightenment. And so just our NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Concerns, and I see Alfredo's here, and he was one of the co-founders, because I was just one of the co-founders in Geneva, and then I helped bring that to New York. We've had the privilege of co-sponsoring several programs with the UN Staff Recreation Council, including the 60th anniversary of the UN celebration in New York. And I have long admired the Enlightenment Society for having the courage to introduce visions and methods and fascinating individuals that expand our consciousness and bring more light to the United Nations and beyond. And I remember whenever I would see your program announcements, I felt my energy level go up. because you always offer the UN community very essential keys that will lead to an enlightenment society by sharing with us how we can all play a role in lifting the vibration and energetic resonance of the United Nations, and thus the world, because whatever happens in the United Nations reaches out and affects the consciousness of so many. And just like the yoga committee is doing to spotlight the powers of the ancient principles of yoga, to awaken deeper energies that cultivate inner peace, provide spiritual nourishment, and bring a sense of spaciousness to our bodies and mind that supports us in connecting to each other and the source of all there is. And what both groups are offering is so needed now more than ever at this moment of choice, because they provide the space where deeper connection, insights, and the highest human capacities are awakened. And whenever this happens, it has a significant effect on how we live, and in particular, our interactions with others and the world at large. And I know, Denise, you wanted me to just share a little bit about the Source of Synergy Foundation and how that was birthed. So we also strive to offer pretty much exactly what you're offering through the Source of Synergy Foundation, because we recognize that our essence is source, a single universal field out of which everything emerges, where we're united as one. And from this place, we create opportunities for synergy that spirals out and deepens connectivity and synergistic engagement. And this synergy will often serve as a catalyst to awaken our innate qualities and capacities as conscious, evolving expressions of source. And the Source of Synergy Foundation was seeded during my time at the United Nations. It was born out of a desire to create some sort of container for a synergistic union, one where the whole was greater than the sum of its parts, and where energy and visions were uplifted and manifested into form through the strength and support of each other. And I remember many moments at the United Nations when one could feel, when they entered a room, palpable energy. It was like an uplifting vibration that one could feel even from the outside of the room before entering. And I can only describe it as an aliveness that permeated the field. And I was drawn to be part of that field and part of creating more of these special moments for others. And then the contrast, there were other times that I think many of you can relate to, when one would walk into a room and it was the opposite. Scanning the room, one could see that people's spirits were not fully activated because they were listening to speeches for hours on end and not having the opportunity to tap into the essence of what they had to contribute to the social challenge being discussed. And attending a commission on human rights at the UN in Geneva over 15 years ago was a catalyst that made me realize that the power of synergy was needed not only at the United Nations, but in all forms. And it really saddened me to witness what was happening in the room at the commission when the speakers were sharing the worst atrocities one could imagine. And because the format was of one speaker speaking after another, many people couldn't absorb all that they were hearing or even offer their thoughts on how to address these horrific human rights challenges. And when I looked around the room, I noticed many people were tuning out. They were checking their phones, talking to each other, and just not being fully present. And I know it felt disempowering for many to just sit there and listen with a broken heart when so many people were suffering. And I know that's how I felt, because the format didn't allow for synergistic exchange where visions and solutions came from those that are truly present. So this defining moment made me ponder what format is needed to inspire the best in people, what conditions make energy truly flow so that our best visions, solutions, and heart-based decisions can manifest into form. And what became clear to me, that the times when I saw people working together in synergy and creating union, like you're doing with the committees, when people were speaking to each other from that deep place in one's soul, I noticed the energy of change had more passion and inspiring ideas and innovative solutions seem to flow. And just going to yoga, some say that yoga means to unite, to return to that union. We can, where we can be whole, where we can see the whole of life as one. And that was the first intention of the Source of Synergy Foundation, to unite individuals, organizations, and efforts that were working to elevate collective consciousness and see if we can support each other in our efforts to lift each other up, leverage our collective potential, and together in synergy be stronger than the sum of our parts. And we had an early blessing when the seeding of the Source of Synergy Foundation was beginning to take form at that moment I was sharing. When I shared that vision with Deepak Chopra, and he said, great, let's do it together. So we did. And one of our main projects, the Evolutionary Leader Circle, was born with the commitment and deep love of so many people, especially Deborah Moldow, who you'll be hearing from soon. She is a founding board member of Source of Synergy and the current director of the Evolutionary Leader Circle. And we're so grateful to her for growing this circle over the past 14 years. And we're also grateful for the rest of our board that keeps us moving forward, including the amazing Denise Scotto. And we are also blessed to have so many fabulous souls that are members of the Evolutionary Leader Circle that believe in the power of leveraging the collective potential to create the shifts needed in our world, like Gregg and Sylvia and many others, including Kurt and Bob Atkinson, that co-edited with Deborah our first book, Our Moment of Choice, Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future. And we're so grateful to Gregg for coming up with the title of the book, doing its introduction, offering a chapter, and his steadfast commitment to leveraging collective soul force to embrace new ways of thinking and living during this time of extreme shifts in our world and extreme changes in our lives. And we are so blessed that the 43 members of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle gifted their chapters that offer evolutionary visions, action steps, and hope as we all navigate today's uncertain times. And just in closing, we see this book as a call for all of us to hold with inner certainty the greatest vision of what we, the collective we as a global family, can be and do together, to lead with our hearts, make choices, and co-create new realities and possibilities to reverse the course we're on. And we wish to honor everyone tuning in, everyone out there that is making positive choices during this very critical time in history, because these choices and actions are leading all of us towards a brighter future. And we cannot predict all of the possible outcomes that our heart-based choices will make. But one thing that is certain is that they will, like the work of the International Day of Yoga Committee and the Enlightenment Society, become part of the universal field where we're all connected as one, and they will impact our destiny, which is especially needed now at our moment of choice. So I'll end there, and thank you so much again for inviting us.
What a beautiful way to really start our program, Diane. And thank you for your really deeply loving words for me personally. I bow to you. I bow to all of you. I really do, because I think that we share this vision of service, and it's really not about me or us. It's about serving for the greater good and really allowing that movement of creation to come through us and to honor that. I'd like to just, honor Alfredo for being with us. He's one of our advisory board members of the International Day of Yoga Committee at the UN. It's a privilege for you to join us. Thank you so much for coming today, Alfredo, as always, with your steadfast support. But I want to bring up one point that you made, Diane, because being a UN staff person, the way I was in New York headquarters, I was involved in many closed door meetings that were not open up to NGOs, not open up to the public, that were just very important meetings where member states themselves would speak about decisions that they would take on resolutions, on treaties, and on communication procedures about problems that were happening, large-scale human rights abuses around the world that were going on. And it's exactly, my experience is exactly what you talked about. You know, there's so many talking heads. There's so much disconnection, you know, between these words that are being said, these fact patterns that happen to people, and a disconnection between the real service that goes on at the UN to create a better world, the disconnection with the underlying principles, because there's a disconnection with oneself, you know, and something greater, that absolute beingness, that source of life, whatever you want to call it, that force of creativity that gives rise to everyone and everything. And I think you really hit something, you know, about the UN. And that's why clubs like the Enlightenment Society, why some of the NGO committees, including the International Day of Peace Committee at the UN, has been so critical. You know, so many of the accredited NGOs have been critical to be holding the UN, cradling it in this support, in this love, in supporting its higher vision and its missions. So I want to thank you for bringing that out, because after all, you know, we are here in terms of helping the UN and consciously helping it too. So this is one way for us to get into, I think, direct understanding, you know, and to allow us to continue to support the UN in a way that it needs to support the staff, the diplomatic corps, the work, and of course, you know, to keep feeding that field that births the underlying values and the underlying principles, you know, that are grounded in these universal deep truths that we find. And I think it's a great transition now to our next speaker, who is a very dear friend of the International Day of Yoga Committee at the UN. She was part of our Yoga Day celebration. She provided our opening invocation this past June when we had our online Yoga Day celebration for World Yoga Day. I'm speaking about our good friend, Reverend Sylvia Sumter. I'd like to introduce Reverend Sylvia so that she can take the floor. She'll join us now. She needs to leave, but I appreciate her spending some time with us and honor her for the time that she's been able to give to us and serve today. Reverend Sylvia is a minister at Unity of Washington, D.C. She not only empowers people there, but people of all backgrounds to recognize their inherent divine oneness. She is going beyond that, and her reach extends far beyond the boundaries of her church, because she superheads this special movement called Stand Up for Humanity, which many of us on the call have participated in, including Diane, Deborah, Paul Luftenager, myself, which has been held at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Prior to that, Reverend Sylvia has been involved in education and has been promoting that, as well as been involved on the Mayor's Council of Religious Affairs, the Board of Trustees for Unity Worldwide. She has authored some books, but also has this beautiful chapter in Our Moment of Choice. So without further ado, I invite Reverend Sylvia.
Thank you so much, Denise. It truly is an honor for me to be here. I thank you for the invitation, because anytime we have an opportunity to gather together, when souls can come together with a desire to hold a sacred intention and to put forth high vibrations and high thoughts, it's a powerful thing. So thank you for the invitation. I'm so grateful and honored to be a part of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. So I just honor and give thanks to Diane for the wonderful work that she is doing. And of course, Deborah, these two sisters, they're my soul sisters, and they are doing such great work on the planet, and especially bringing people together to hold this sacred vibration. You know, we all are aware that we are in such a powerful time in the evolution of our species. And it's what I call radical. We're experiencing radical healing. Denise, I loved your opening statement when you said that people are questioning what is going on, what is happening. Those who perhaps might not be as awakened as we would like, but they know something is afoot. And what I think is important for everyone to know is that in this time of radical healing, everything, as we know, is coming to the forefront to be healed. And we are in the process of healing. And what is so fascinating is that we are healing on every level of life itself. Mother Earth is healing. Our societal structures are breaking down so that they can be reimagined and healed at a deeper level. Our individual lives, we are all experiencing healing as well. But what's so fascinating is that it's all happening at once. Everything is happening now. And therefore, it might feel cataclysmic. People might feel that something so major is going on, but it is going on. And what's going on is radical healing. And what I'm coming to understand is that sometimes healing can be messy. Healing can be messy. Healing can be painful. Healing can be disturbing to the status quo. And what we're looking for are ways in which we can move through this powerful time of transformation, of healing, and to move through the trauma that we are experiencing with conscious healing, being consciously aware that we are in the state of unfolding and coming into a place of understanding our connectedness to life, that there's a oneness that prevails throughout every facet of life. We are one with the earth, one with all the living beings and creatures upon the earth. We are not separate from what is happening in the universe. We are one with it all, with all life. And so when we understand that this sense of wholeness, this sense of oneness, this sense of union, yoga, coming into union and communion with one another, with all of life, then healing takes place, because to be healed is to be made whole. And so when we're coming into this state of wholeness and oneness, things that are not serving the greater good fall away, and we're coming into this perfect union. And I titled my chapter on elevating our spiritual nature, the pathway to healing humanity, because the dynamic that is taking place is healing on the physical level, the mental level, the emotional level, and the spiritual level. The earth physically is healing. We are physically healing with having this pandemic that is presenting itself to the physical body and showing that even the physical body is in need of healing to strengthen our immune system physically. We are being called at this time to strengthen our mental capacity, the power of using this great creative tool called the mind and awareness within the mind. We are coming to a place of healing our emotional body. So we see a lot of expression, be it maybe anger or I might dare say even hatred and all these negative vibrations, but that's fine because they're coming up to be healed. Everything in life right now is coming up to be healed. And what I love about our title, and thank you, Gregg, for having the spiritual insight to title the book Our Moment of Choice, because this is our moment of choice, but it has to be conscious choice. Just like we're doing conscious healing. Healing is taking place, but the ease and the effect of it is more powerful when we can engage all of it consciously. Right. Healing is going to take place whether we like it or not, but how much more powerful will it be if we can engage it consciously? So we're taking this conscious choice, because when I do not choose consciously, I still choose, albeit unconsciously, I'm still making a choice. So the power lies in my ability to engage in conscious healing, to engage in conscious thinking, bringing my awareness to my choices and choosing as the Bible says, the more excellent way. The Bible asks us to choose the more excellent way. And that is what we are all being called to do, to choose the more excellent way. And that way is the way that leads to a higher dimension of life itself, and bringing all of the dimensions of life into a state of wholeness. Our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of being, because we're multidimensional beings. But to bring them all together is to regenerate ourselves, to bring the regenerative force of life itself to bear, so that we can be whole physically, in our bodies, in our physical root desires and basic needs for shelter, the physical need for shelter, food, warmth, comfort, all of that, safety, security, that attributes itself to our physical sense of being and well-being. And then we bring it to our mental capacity, our mental ability to think in ways that bring a sense of connection to who we really are, and how we are creative beings, that the thoughts we hold and the energy and the vibration we put out through our capacity to see and think creates through our perceptions and through our attitudes and through our literal voice and speaking things into being, that when that is brought into a state of conscious choice, conscious awareness, we will then also choose the more excellent way. And our emotions, when we bring this deep desire for love, you know, the basic desire is to belong, to be connected, to feel a sense of love. And when we are feeling a sense of separation outside of our union, outside of our sense of wholeness, then the opposite of love, we breathe the opposite. Our emotions become fearful, and we begin to see ourselves as the other, and we don't have a sense of connection and sacredness and value and love, divine love for one another. So when we bring conscious awareness to even our emotional state of being, we come toward the place of love. And of course, for me, the ultimate is to awaken spiritually. And when we bring what's happening is we are seeing that we are not just physical, mental, emotional beings, but all of that comes together, and we discover our spiritual nature. And once we do that, in the spiritual awareness, there is no separation. In the spiritual awareness and presence of the presence within us, as spiritual beings, we awaken to our connection with one another. The heart awakens. We no more see separation, and we come together to create a loving experience, a manifest, bringing heaven upon the earth, because we are now choosing that more excellent way and using our true identities as spiritual beings. That's who we are, spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe, guided by spiritual principles and laws, and having a spiritual experience. So I'm just excited that there are so many souls on the planet who are waking up. And as I said in my chapter, when one person awakens, it's easier for others to awaken. So as we continue to let our light shine, to choose, to make a conscious choice, to consciously participate in this transformation, in this radical healing, and we consciously choose, we make it easier, because we're creating the wonderful force field that others can just slip into. And together we are creating this world that works for all. So I have hope. Even though it's challenging, it's messy, it's painful, I have hope that we are choosing that which truly is our next step in evolution and growth upon this planet. So I'm honored to just walk the path with all of you. I celebrate the work that each of you are doing in your own individual way and call, because it's going to take all of us and our individual paths, but the individual paths are contained within the whole. We're all seeking to express the oneness and wholeness of life. So I thank each of you for the work you're doing. I thank you, Denise, for the invitation, and for the evolutionary leaders providing a platform to continue to do this great work. So thank you, Diane and Deborah, for that. Blessings to everyone. And let's continue. Let's carry on.
Onward and upward. Yes.
Upward, yes. Yes.
Well, I am just so grateful for you for the elegance and simplicity, and how you really explained true healing You know, I've studied with various healers, so to speak, and you really just made it so simple to understand, you know, because it's all the way through. It starts with spirit and then it comes all the way through. And you really laid that out so beautifully. And the thing, Sylvia, that you said is it's happening for us. It's not happening to us. It's happening for us to use as an opportunity for complete and total healing for our own self, for our families, for our communities, for our beautiful, beautiful planet.
Yes.
You know, and I really appreciate you emphasizing those points, because sometimes, you know, it's not really said. It can be very confusing. What does healing mean? But when we speak about it from a conscious standpoint, you know, let's say someone's directing, and there have been medical studies that show if someone is consciously directing chemotherapy, right, to a specific area in the body, it is optimally used and it is very successful. Because again, it's going back to bringing it to that great absolute source of everything and taking it all the way through. It's surrendering to that to see what can happen and what can unfold. So, you know, I appreciate your words and the way that you've really, I think, opened the perspective to so many people on this call, and for those who will be listening and watching later on. And, you know, we may want to do some event just specifically on that, because this is such an important topic, I think. So, you know, I appreciate you so much for joining us for the time today, and for your contribution. And I encourage everyone to take a look at the book. Go online, look at the Our Moment of Choice URL, the website. You know, you'll see the names of all of these contributors, over 40 people who are these amazing thought leaders in their own areas, in their own field. And, you know, the thing about the book that I love is they have these chapters, but in the chapters at the end, there's a spotlight. I don't know if you could see it. Yeah. So at the end of the chapter, there's a spotlight. And then after that, there's a call to action. You know, so this book, I think, is really just an incredible tool in so many ways. And that brings me to the next person who's going to be joining us today, and that is the Reverend Deborah Moldow. Now, I want to say a little bit about the Reverend Deborah Moldow in my introduction, because she has been someone who has been an incredible mentor. You know, for many years, for 20 years or so, she represented the World Peace Prayer Society, which is an accredited NGO, you know, and she was at the forefront of that, and also of the formation of the URI, the United Religions Initiative. You know, Deborah, as you heard Diane say, has been involved with the Source of Synergy Foundation at its inception, at its beginning. She's been a board member, is a board member, and is the director of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. So I also want to say, though, and share that she's the founder of the Garden of Light, which is an online platform for emerging global spirituality. So with her vast experience, you know, we're really honored that she's been such a key person with this book, as an editor, as a contributor, you know, and as one of the guiding lights, along with Diane, for the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. So without further ado, I invite you, dear Deborah, to take the floor.
Oh, thank you, Denise, for that deeply moving introduction. I'm delighted to be here today with all of you, and with so many of my colleagues from the United Nations. So many of us met at the United Nations as part of civil society's presence there. And I was very touched to hear both Denise and Diane talking about the role of civil society at the United Nations, and how they've often been called, the NGOs have often been called the conscience of the United Nations, but I like to think of it more as the heart of the United Nations, where the phrase, "we the peoples," that launched the United Nations is really brought into full expression, that it is not we the governments. And I think that over the years, as the United Nations has held the light of possibility for the human race to truly acknowledge and express its unity as one human family, sharing one precious planet that nurtures us. It is the civil society community that's been giving voice to that dream as the governments struggle to come into unity when they have each their own agendas. And then you see civil society coming with agendas like peace and health and care for the environment and respect for all peoples and many of these ideals. So when I was representing the prayer, "May peace prevail on earth" at the United Nations, it was so exciting to hear from inspiring people, not only the diplomats, and some of them were very brilliant and dedicated in these challenging circumstances of working for an institution. And then there were people like Alfredo Sverjunas and many who was representing the World Bank at the time, where we would hear a holistic vision of possibility for the future that the diplomats may have felt, but they did not have a platform to express. And also the UN Enlightenment Society and other staff clubs were places where we who were representing outside organizations could really come into community and friendship with the people who work at the United Nations, who work for world peace every day of their lives. And I was always very grateful, particularly for the presentations from the Enlightenment Society of so many amazing guests who held this vision of possibility for the human race. So I thank Denise. Denise, you've been a light at the United Nations for so long. You were with us in solidarity with the International Day of Peace NGO Committee, and now you're heading the International Day of Yoga UN Committee. So you've really been a force for the good, and we're delighted to have you in the Evolutionary Leaders community as well. So I'd like to speak just a little bit about the Evolutionary Leaders community. It is a wonderful family of visionaries, and the book, Our Moment of Choice, is an expression of the evolutionary leaders, because 43 of the 184 evolutionary leaders are represented in this book. But everyone in the evolutionary leaders community is dedicated to our purpose to collectively inspire, support, and serve conscious evolution. So what does that mean? That means that together, the human race is actually capable of choosing its future. And that's what our moment of choice is all about. When Gregg gifted us with this title, thank you, Gregg Braden, many years ago, we thought, yes, it is our moment of choice, and that's a good title. Now in 2020, oh my God, everybody can see that this is truly our moment of choice. This is it. The global pandemic has awakened many people to how we are part of one web of life, sharing this planet, and what affects one affects all. And as Reverend Sylvia so beautifully articulated, it has given us a global mission of healing, literally. And so much is coming up to be healed, and the virus is exposing so many flaws in our current institutions that have not been able to meet this challenge. And the heartbreaking economic effects it's having, as well as the tremendous loss of life around the planet. And our prayers are with everyone who is suffering at this time. And we know that the suffering on our planet goes way beyond COVID, because the poverty level is unacceptable on this planet, and the degradation of our environment is suicidal. So here we are at this moment of choice, and we are in need of vision and hope. So that's our subtitle for the book above me, Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future. And this book not only gives vision that is from these 43 evolutionary leaders, but this book invites your vision. And if you are on this call with us, if you are watching this, you are an evolutionary leader, because you are standing at the edge of this evolution of the entire human species. We are at this choice point right now, this moment. And I know a lot of you are eagerly anticipating the solstice on December 21st. We're all going to participate in the global minute of silence. And we're going to be enjoying this tremendous conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, making a star in the sky shine like the Star of Bethlehem. This conjunction is part of the season of light that's celebrated with Hanukkah and Christmas and Kwanzaa. And I hope that you share my feeling that things are about to change in a very good way, in a way that we have never seen before on this planet. This is the opportunity. This is the opportunity for every one of us to step forward, to go deep inside and to hear the voice of Spirit talking to us, guiding us, bringing us into our fullest creative, co-creative expression, so that we can all be part of bringing in, midwifing a whole new era for the human race. So thank you so much, everyone on this call, all of the contributors, my fellow editors for this book, Dr. Kurt Johnson, whom we'll be hearing from, and Dr. Bob Atkinson, and all of the contributors. You can learn more about the book. You can get your copy if you go to ourmomentofchoice.com. So blessings to everyone who's part of this. And let us continue to hold the United Nations in a very special place in our hearts, because we all know that the United Nations has not always lived up to our expectations. But think what a job it has to hold all of humanity in its hands. We know that it was founded by some deeply spiritual people, including Dag Hammarskjöld and Eleanor Roosevelt and others. So let us hold the heart of the United Nations in our heart, that it might live into its truest mission of peace on earth. Thank you.
So be it. Amen. Thank you for that short prayer for the UN. You're always so inspirational, Deborah. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm going to give a plug. Go to our moment of choice. If you need a last minute holiday gift, I think that this is a perfect thing. There's still time. You can get it. It's something that I think is an invaluable tool, an invaluable resource. I would like to acknowledge that some of the other contributors, as Deborah said, are part of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, who are also friends of the International Day of Yoga Committee at the UN, including our friend Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Jude Caravan, Dr. Deepak Chopra, Lynn McTaggart. So it's something where we already know a little bit about the deep commitment of these people to spirit, to their conscious way of being in the world, and their quest to bring more and more people with them to create a better world through the work that they're doing. So I highly encourage this. I absolutely do. And for those of you who know me, you know I don't plug things, you know, very easily, but this one is a no-brainer for me. It strictly comes, you know, from above. You know, since Deborah said the accredited NGOs, you know, are very valuable in terms of resources for UN staff and the diplomatic corps, that's absolutely true. You know, and I see so many of our friends with us today. I do want to acknowledge some core team members of the UN SRC Enlightenment Society. So Reverend Z, Reverend Zoe, Del Gao, you know, they're with us today. Thank you for joining us. You've heard Alfredo is with us today, but we also have friends too, you know, who are with us. Ann Crater, who has been so involved with spreading peace, the International Day of Peace, a global movement for a culture of peace. Reverend Stacy Goforth is with us. We have our good friend from the Yoga Day Committee, Diane Marie Williamson, Yoga and Daily Life, who's with us. We have our good friend from URI, Heidi Harden is with us. You know, I could go on and on and on. So I appreciate every one of you joining us today. And it really is about creating a sacred and wonderful community. So thank you. I want to bring now someone who has created so many communities and has brought so many communities together. I'm speaking of one of our core members of the International Day of Yoga Committee, Dr. Kurt Johnson. And Dr. Kurt Johnson has been so instrumental in the Yoga Day Committee getting its message out about how yoga in its fullness and richness is really experienced in the UN and through the accredited NGOs to the UN. And I'm holding one of the first publication that we did with the Light on Light organization, which is Karuna, Light on Light Yoga. And we've put together a special publication that highlights yoga in terms of the UN for World Yoga Day. This is our very first cover. And our tagline is yoga, healing, and peace, you know, because that's what it's about. We've heard about healing, we've heard about peace. And at the end of the day, that is what we deeply believe. So Dr. Kurt Johnson has been responsible for this, you know, and he's just involved with so many things, and he will tell you. He's one of the authors of the book. He's one of the editors of the book. He's worked in professional science and comparative religion for over 40 years. He's author of the influential book, The Coming into Spiritual Age, and 2 award-winning books in science, Nabokov's Blues and Fine Lines. He served on the faculty of New York's Interfaith Seminary for 12 years, which is One Spirit, and he's been associated with the American Museum of Natural History. He's been so involved with the evolutionary leaders, with many of the circles that the evolutionary leaders group have established and ordained and have established and created. I could go on and on and on and on. He's a very familiar face to the NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concerns, NGO Forum 21 Institute, which has a focus on the environment and our beautiful planet. So without further ado, Dr. Kurt Johnson, it's my deep pleasure for you to take the floor today.
You know, Denise, thank you so much. And it's really a thrill to be here with so many other workers in the vineyard and people who are trying to align the world with the heart. So as all of you have said, there is this tremendous synchronicity between the origin and goals of the United Nations community and actually the origin and goals of the evolutionary leaders, which is the raising of consciousness at a global level. And also the landscape of our book, Our Moment of Choice, which is divided into 7 circles that are addressing the work that needs to be done right now to lift ourselves to those higher developmental levels. And also because there are so many people within the evolutionary leaders community that are either personally credentialed in the United Nations community or are a part of NGOs that are credentialed there. So whether it's the message of the Earth Charter or the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or the Sustainable Development Goals, that's where the alignment is across all of these values, which of course reflect those of the great wisdom traditions, and of course in that the great yogic traditions. So not only that, but our alignment with the UN declared annual holidays, so the International Day of Yoga, the International Day of Peace, the World Interfaith Harmony Week. At all of these times, we bring forward not only all of our online programming capabilities, but our media assets capabilities. And as Denise said, we've really been able to use our free e-magazines, the link for which I'll put into the chat box. We're 4 issues in now on our issues for Yoga Day, and you'll see many other things there with regard to sacred sites and UNESCO and other things that have gone on there. So it's all about multiplying that message at the global level to try to get that ripple effect, as we were joking before we got on the call, for the real true nature of humanity is that we could actually have you know, a wonderful earth that would serve everyone's well-being. Now, the evolutionary leaders also have what we call synergy circles. That means that within the 200 members of the evolutionary leaders are these smaller groups that specialize in areas of activism. And we have one that's dedicated to the Sustainable Development Goals, nearly 95 major thought leaders. And we will be actually joining that discussion with a major website in the next few weeks, which will be at sdgthoughtleaderscircle.org. I'll also put that in the chat box. One of the other synergy circles is the Education Synergy Circle. And we actually have a publication I just learned yesterday. We're going to be able to finally get it out over the Christmas holidays, because all of our staff, they're professionals, but they're volunteers. And they gave me the flag. If we can do this over the holidays, we can get it done. But we have a major piece on universal principles and universal action steps. And I think all of you know there's a long history of organizations in the world that since before even World War I have declared what their universal principles were and what their universal action steps were recommended. But these have never been gathered in one place. So we actually have had that manuscript together for some time, and we're going to be able to get that out through the Education Synergy Circle of the EL. So the last thing I'll say, simply because we want to give plenty of time for interaction, is that, as Denise mentioned, all of the NGOs in the UN community bring to the community the values that are rooted in their particular NGO. So the NGOs, from the values, ethics, and religious landscape of the world, this is a major, major driver within the international community for not just the extrinsic work, but for the intrinsic work and the interaction that has to go between those in order to bring those out. And this is where the work of the Yoga Day Committee and bringing those ancient and evergreen, everlastingly wise physical and spiritual values and wisdom of the yogic traditions has been so crucial. So it's been a thrill and actually an honor for us to do these annual issues with Denise and the community. So last thing I'll just say is just more about OMC real quick. You'll see the logo there. It actually really inculcates what we've said. You've got head, hands, and heart all reaching down to lift up the world. And my 2 chapters were the afterword, where Bob and I summarize kind of the general final message of the whole book, which is this hope that we can get to this new world that the heart would like. but also a chapter I did with David Sloan Wilson, evolutionary biologist, reprising our visit to His Holiness the Dalai Lama last November. Our job there was to catch him up on where the alignment is unfolding between modern science and the message of the great wisdom traditions. And that alignment is getting huger and huger because evolution has decided that evolution is moving toward altruism and moving toward what serves the good of the whole. And that's actually called the cooperative view of evolution, as opposed to what we'll remember as the old social Darwinist competitive view. So that was actually our message there. Another thing I'll throw in the chat book in closing is David, my co-author, David Sloan Wilson, has a new book out, which is a grand modern counterproposal to the gospel of greed and selfishness, which was Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And it's a new book. It's a novel. It's an easy read, and it's a great read, called Atlas Hugged, not Shrugged. So I'll put that also in the chat box. So thrilled to be here. Hats off to everyone who's been a part of our moment of choice and to all this great work through the United Nations community. So lots of love to everybody, and thanks so much.
You know, Kurt, this good of the whole, I'm so glad you brought it up that way, because that's such an easy way to, I think, in such a short, simple phrase, it's a way to connect the mind and the heart, you know, and to connect all of us together with the cosmos as well. So, you know, I love that. And I think I'm going to start using that. I'll, of course, attribute it to you, but thank you for bringing that up. And, you know, I don't know how you do all that you do. You're involved with so many projects. And I think the newest education synergy circle will really have a very worthy and important and useful resource for us. So, you know, you're always at the fore of providing those, you know, and special bow to you, you know, for all of that and for all that you're doing. I don't know how you get any sleep, but, you know, all I can say is just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And actually, to mention that good of the whole is actually Julie Kroll's brand, our dear sister, Julie Kroll. So we'll give her the credit on that one.
Okay, no wonder why it sounded familiar. Thank you, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And, you know, I absolutely love our last speaker who's joining us today. He doesn't know it, and many people don't know it, but at one point in time, I was a groupie, you know, because he would be on all these like webinars with Jennifer McLean, with Lisa Garr. You know, I could go on and on and on, you know, but I am speaking about Gregg Braden. And for those of you, I think most of us on this webinar or this meeting don't need any introduction, but I will give a little introduction nonetheless. Gregg Braden is a 5-time New York Times best-selling author, scientist, and a pioneer in the emerging paradigm, bridging science, social policy, and human potential. He worked as a global problem solver during times of crisis for Fortune 500 companies. We're talking big business here. He has been a problem solver today as he reveals deep insights into our origins as a human species, our human potential, and how these understandings inform the policies and the underlying emerging world that we, as we've heard from our speakers, are creating right now through our consciousness and through our understanding of who we are. His research has led to 15 film credits, 12 award-winning books that are now published in over 40 languages. He's a 2020 nominee for the prestigious Templeton Award. He has presented his discoveries in over 32 countries on 6 continents. And of course, he's been a speaker at the UN. The last time I remember hearing him speak at the UN was with his fellow brother and our fellow EL Circle member, Dr. Bruce Lipton. I could go on, but the floor is yours, Gregg. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Denise, so much for your warm introduction. And, you know, it's always interesting to hear someone else talk about the life that we've lived. And I'm always in awe at how different many of our lives are now when we look at the path that has led us to where we are. And I'm also in awe of how the paths have prepared us perfectly for where we find ourselves in the world today. So Denise, I want to thank you for the invitation to be here today. I want to thank the Enlightenment Committee, certainly, everyone working behind the scenes and everyone that's sharing this today. And it is especially an honor to be here with so many colleagues, brilliant minds, beautiful hearts, who I now call my dear friends. And, you know, there's so much that I'd like to say. The book, I have to do this. we all are doing this. So I'll for everyone watching, I'll share a little secret. This book, this is not the first time that this book attempted to happen. Over 10 years ago, we tried to create this book, to write this book, and the universe very clearly showed us it was not the time. We had no way of knowing, of course, that we would be in a global pandemic of lockdowns, but we did know very clearly that we were in a moment, a pivotal moment, a precious window of time in the history of our planet, in the history of our civilization, in the history of our nations, and even in our individual lives. We all sensed that now is different, that something is happening now. And it is that something that became the catalyst for us to attempt to bring this book together. And it's interesting how many people felt that this book would not work. We had publishers telling us it wouldn't work. We had production companies telling us that it wouldn't work. So here we are. Now we have this beautiful book. So for me, I just want to share my impetus for wanting to create this book. It's all about our story. A new human story is emerging. And when people hear the word story, they think it's some kind of a philosophical concept. But the truth is that we live our lives based upon the way we've been taught to think about ourselves. We solve our problems based upon our story. We choose our relationships. We heal our bodies. We create the laws and the social policies that in many respects determine the degrees of freedom with which we're allowed to live our lives. It's all based upon the way we've been taught to think about ourselves. And this is important because we are steeped in a story that is based upon obsolete science and false assumptions. It began about 150 years ago during the time of Charles Darwin. And we are taught and indoctrinated from the time that we're young in the thinking that we live in a world of separation, that we live in a world of competition and conflict and scarcity, that we are vulnerable beings that should fear the uncertainties in the world around us. And that story is reflected in the world that we see today. That story is reflected in the way that we solve our problems through the UN in the past or through other nations. The UN is helping to change that. That story is reflected in the way that we have treated our earth. Denise, you keep talking about the beautiful planet we live upon. The way we treat the earth is a reflection of our story and what we've been taught to think about ourselves. So science is on our side, and the science is telling us that we are now writing a new story because the old story that served us, and I don't want to judge it, and it's not about making anyone right or wrong. We say the old story served us, it got us to where we are now, and now we recognize that old story has created ways of thinking and living that are unsustainable. Those are the things that are breaking down. The only things that are breaking down are the things that no longer work. And it's an opportunity in this rare, precious, this little window of time. This kind of change is not what we're going through now. We can't go on like this forever. It is not sustainable. And our ancestors told us that almost universally. They point in their traditions, their predictions, their prophecies, their texts, and now the science is telling us that we are living a convergence of natural rhythms and cycles that are the triggers, they're the catalysts for the changing world that's showing us what works and what doesn't work. Dr. Sylvia, Reverend Sylvia, talked a lot about the healing. And you know, you all are from the UN community. I was on the other side of that. I worked in the corporations during a very frightening time in the history of our world during the Cold War. and I was a scientist in the defense industry. And I got to see firsthand how people work together in times of fear, because that is what much of history is based upon, our response to fear. So when we find ourselves as individuals, as communities, as societies, as nations, when we find ourselves with deep hurt, and we are a world of deep hurt, and I'm listening to you all talk about the committees where you have listened to the testimony firsthand of examples and instances of this deep hurt, unresolved hurt. We will all hurt, but it is the unresolved hurt that becomes the fear. And that fear is often expressed as hate. And what I see happening right now is that hate is what's coming up for us to heal, because the better we know ourselves, the better equipped we are to deal with the world. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear change. So the world is changing, converging cycles of climate, innovation, cycles of human conflict. They're telling us that we are in this window of extremes. We're just not taught this in the mainstream. We don't learn this in school. We're not taught this in the mainstream media, but there is a system that is at work, and it's driving this change. It's intense, and it's a brief window. And what we do now determines what happens in the world that is emerging. And for me, that's where the juice is. That's where it gets really exciting. That's why this book is so important. I just did a little quick math, 43 contributors in here. We have over 1,000 years of collective wisdom in this book, over a millennia of collective wisdom in this book, in the pages that are what? There's about 1.25 inches thick. So there is no answer. There is no, people ask all the time, you know, what should we do? What's the answer? There is no answer. There are many solutions. And this book is a template for those many solutions. Denise, I don't know how long we're going to get to talk together today, but you asked me to relate a little bit about yoga. We are living the yoga of healing. We're living the global yoga of healing. But I have to say on a personal level, yoga has played a powerful role in my life. I was introduced to yoga by a Sikh in Denver, Colorado in 1986. And it led me into a journey into the Himalayas in Tibet, to be with the monks and the nuns, and into India and into Nepal, to learn what yoga means to different people. And it's more than an exercise. It can be an exercise, but it's a deep expression, a personal expression of personal healing in our inner world that is expressed in the way that we choose to live our lives and the values that become the foundation of our daily practice. And I think the world is going through that right now, Denise, as we determine what values we cherish as societies, as nations, as a species. What are the values that become the foundation of the choices and the laws and the policies that we enact as we go forward from our time of extremes? That's what our moment of choice is all about. So for me, once again, the bottom line, the better we know ourselves, the less we fear that change. And Denise, can I just share on a personal note? Can I share one more quick thing about
Absolutely, go for it, please.
I just, you know, this is an intense time, and it's an intense time for a lot of people. COVID has added a degree of intensity. And just on a personal level, I lost my mom last week to COVID. And I have to, the only reason I'm saying this is she was just such an awesome, amazing woman. And she literally fought for my life when I was young, and I had the blessing of facilitating a graceful passage for her in the last years of her life. But it is my personal practice of yoga that has helped me to embrace the depth of what her passing means to me on a daily basis. Yoga has been one of the most consistent things to me in my life, and is the daily practice. I'm a night person. Most of my yoga happens between 11 at night and 1 in the morning. I know it's different for a lot of people. I'm also a musician. That's when I'm not writing, and when I write, those are my writing hours. So my evening yoga practices have helped me to heal and re-heal on a daily basis and reposition myself in the presence of what the world is showing me. And this is a personal testament to the power of this ancient practice, by some estimates over 7,000 years old in the Vedas, that helps us to honor our relationship, not only to our physical bodies, but to our spirit and to the reality of the world that we find ourselves in. Is it old? Absolutely. Is it ancient? Absolutely. Is it obsolete? Boy, it's just as current today as it was, I imagine, 7,000 years ago. So Denise, thank you for the opportunity to just to kind of bring that in on a personal note, because honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have this daily practice of the continuity and the consistency that helped me to find the core of myself, to heal in a healthy way. And that's the goal for all of us. So our moment of choice is literally a template for the yoga of and the union of new ideas based upon new discoveries that are rewriting the human story. And I am so honored to be a part of this book. I'm honored to be with you all today. And I'll close right there. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about the book, Denise.
Gregg, you know, I am so touched that you were able to share with all of us and feel safe enough and vulnerable enough to share with us about the recent passing of your mom, and also how significant your dedicated practice to yoga has been in terms of your healing and being able to, you know, make sense of all of this. For those of you who are with us today, we're almost at the time of the close, but since we started late, we will be able to extend and stay together. If you can stay and you'd like to stay, please join us for a little while longer, maybe 15 minutes or so. If you need to go, we understand that. But I think that this is the perfect place for us to come together for a moment of silence. If we can take about a few seconds of silence, we can remember Gregg's mom, some other people who have passed, as well as a dear friend and special member of our committee. Evelyn Grindon Welch is making her transition to the other side. So I would ask that we join together now, we open our hearts, and we come together in this collective silence in this moment. Thank you so much. Thank you. It felt very powerful to me, our coming together and being present within our heart, our greater heart, and our shared heart. I want to get back to, Gregg, what you said about the book offering many solutions. You know, it's not just one way. You know, we're at a moment of choice. It's not just one way, you know. So if you're happy to elaborate a little bit more about that, I'd love for you to do that. And I, by the way, I always love seeing the dancing Shiva behind you. So for those of you who don't know, Gregg has a dancing Shiva behind him.
Thank you so much, Denise. Is my audio still on? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, you know, this Shiva, I'm in a studio set today. I'm filming for a series called Ancient Civilizations. And this Shiva is very important. I have one in every sacred space in my home. I have it in my writing office, in my yoga space. My screen's telling me that I'm muted, but I'm not. And I have a lot of questions about this. And I just want to say something briefly. You know, the many forms of Shiva, it's Brahma, the creator. Many people are familiar with that. Vishnu, the preserver. But when it comes to Shiva, many people will say Shiva is the destroyer. And I have to tell you, when in my time in India and Nepal, and I asked the yogis about this and the mystics, And what they said very clearly, and this applies to where we are today, so it's not off topic, is that Shiva is the transformer that transforms from one way of being into another. Sometimes in the process of transformation, what has been and is no longer serving us is destroyed, but it is not gratuitous destruction. So many people were afraid of Shiva. They said, oh, you know, Shiva the Destroyer. Shiva is the transformer, and we are all in that transformation process. And this is a reminder for me to see and to think, when I see a lot of what I see happening in the world today, that it is a transformative process. And when it comes to the solutions, you know, we live in a world where we're conditioned to look for a fix. You know, just tell me how to make it better. Tell me what to do. And where we find ourselves today is inviting us into a very, very different way of thinking, because, as I said, there is no answer, but there are many, many solutions, because we are healing on many different levels. And this is, I think, the beauty of the book, Our Moment of Choice. We have 43 plus people who have dedicated the bulk of their adult lives and the passion, and they've made sacrifices to understand on a deep level. They look beyond the obvious to say, what is happening in the world? What did our ancestors know that we've forgotten? What is it we're only beginning to understand? And how can we apply these understandings in our lives? And I honestly, and I'm not saying it's just because I love the book. I'm not saying it for that, although I do love the book. I know of no other single book that brings and coalesces these ideas into the circles of thought and into the continuity of not only information, but actionable principles that can be taken. So that's what I wanted to say about this, Denise. It really is. I think there's something in there for everyone. And, you know, we all learn differently. And so the language in the book, my language of science, for example, may not be a language of the person that reads it. But we all have the opportunity to look beneath the language, to take the understandings and share them at the family dinner table, for example, in your family language, with your kids and with the people you share your life with, or to go to work. Not our words, but it's the ideas that are expressed, and then to translate those into the vocabulary that people share among themselves. And I think this, again, this is where the action is. This is where the opportunity is. And everyone knows something is up right now. Even those that used to say, what's the big deal? You know, the world goes on as it always has. Even those people are saying, man, it's obvious something is going on. Two questions: what's happening? How can we make life better? And that's what's in that book.
You know, I just like to give a little anecdote when you talk about the evolutionary leaders who have contributed, and the people themselves as individuals have been deeply committed to creating a better world through their own discipline. I have to say, this is something that I actually did feel when there was the special event at the mission to Nigeria in New York, and many of the evolutionary leaders were speaking. I left that meeting just feeling as if I had come from Darshan, you know, with one of these highly evolved yogis who I had been following or who I appreciate, you know. And I remarked this to Deborah and Diane and said, you know, I really just felt such incredible spiritual energy, you know, and that really made me just recommit to being a board member of Source of Synergy and to lessen my obligations with the legal community, because I had been so involved in, you know, chairing committees with professional bar associations, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, I think that deep commitment and that real, you know, dedication to conscious evolution, you know, really can be felt when you read the book. When you read these words, they come alive, you know, and that goes to the underlying values and philosophies that you spoke, Greg, you know, and I think anyone who picks up this book will actually feel that. I see you're nodding your head.
Well, I had muted myself, so
yeah,
absolutely. And I have to tell you, I did not design the cover. When I had the opportunity to see the cover, I was so thrilled. as I mentioned, the book tried to happen 10 years ago, and we got so many signs it wasn't the time. When a publisher did show interest in this book, we said, let's give it a shot. We had no way of knowing how much they would get what we were doing. And when this cover came to us to review, I said, man, they got this. I wouldn't change a thing. It's a beautiful cover. It's different than what I had envisioned, and it's a beautiful cover. And Dr. Bob and Dr. Kurt did such an awesome job. Kurt, you're still with us, so I want to thank you, brother, for everything you did to make this go the way that it has gone and is smooth, and it flowed. It was a lot of work. Khalil Gibran, in his book, The Prophet, tells us that work is love made visible. And I believe that. I have it on every email that goes out. It's on every office and every wall. And I shared it at my mom's service as well, because life is work and this book was work. It's our visible expression of our love for one another and for this world. And I'm just so honored to be part of the team that was able to bring this together and to birth it. So thank you.
I think it was a great experience for the ELs as well, because it really showed how that convergent power that we talk about at our yearly gatherings and how we can put that into action. So persons like yourself and the other, I think there were like 8 New York Times bestselling authors that were actually in the book. And one program that we did with all of them had 42,000 listeners. So it's really persons like yourself, Gregg, who then bring the audience to the book, you know, because there's so much that's out there. So Gregg, you've been so generous with your time and your wisdom, and we're so grateful for that.
My honor, Kurt. Thank you.
You know, I would like to share with everyone, one of our executive board members from our Yoga Day committee, Sabita Gear, with the Brahma Kumaris organization, has written in, and this is what she said about Shiva to you, Gregg. This is awesome, Gregg. I love that concept of Shiva the Transformer. Thank you for sharing that. So, you know, thank you for joining us, Sabita. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. At this point, we are running over time, and I'd like to turn the floor to Deborah and then Diane for any last-minute comments before we formally close. Deborah?
Thank you so much, Denise. Thank you, Gregg. Thank you, Kurt. And thank you, Diane. Thank you for all of you who have joined us today. I would like to take my moment to acknowledge, oh, you can't see, can you? Oh, I was trying to show the back cover of the book, which has all of the contributors, but because of my background here, I can't really, maybe somebody else can hold it up. So you can see the amazing people who wrote for this book. Thank you, Denise. Including, but not limited to, Eben Alexander, Michael Bernard Beckwith, Joan Borisenko, Deepak Chopra, Jean Houston, Dwayne Elgin, Barbara Marx Hubbard. One of the last things she wrote before she passed 2 years ago. This is Irvin Laszlo, Bruce Lipton, James O'D, John Perkins, Elizabeth Saturis. I mean, there's so many precious and beautiful voices represented in this book. And when I had first shared this book with Becky Suzik, who is helping us out today with this program, she said, oh my God, it's my bookshelf. So just as a final plug for this book, this is really a gift to yourself or to your loved ones for the holiday season, because this book is filled with hope and light. And that is what we need right now. We need to do what happens on the solstice, which is to bring in the light. We've been in a season of darkness with COVID and many other crises in our world. And this is our moment of choice. Thank you.
Diane, any final words?
Sure, Denise, you mentioned the shared heart, and I was just thinking there's been so many striking and heartwarming acts of kindness shown since the pandemic started. And I just read an article yesterday about a doctor that discovered that kindness was the best medicine for his COVID patients and his fellow healthcare professionals, and that a kind, caring, and compassionate exchange helps to boost the immune system and uplifts one's spirit. So let's just continue to boost each other's immune system, uplift each other's spirit. There's so many powerful ways we can offer our loving support to each other. And we just so need goodness because we're in such a dark time. And if we can make that brighter, and goodness and kindness and small acts of kindness is something we can all give. And I believe this is our greatest job right now.
Beautiful. Speaking of kindness, I would like all of us to give a very warm, I guess, salute to Becky Suzik, who has been our technical wizard, who has been trying to get this live streamed, who's been doing such phenomenal work today. She's helped us prepare, create the beautiful slide. We did a test. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your technical capabilities. We honor you. We appreciate you. Without you, this couldn't be as wonderful as it is. So I absolutely want to acknowledge you, Becky, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, so that you know, you feel appreciated, because you've helped us to hold this space and this time and bring all of us together. So I want to thank all of our extraordinary panel members, all of our wonderful contributors, editors to our moment of choice, to our friends at the United Nations. This is the back of the cover. There's a list of all of the contributors here, all 43 of them. You could see it now. But go to the website, go to our Moment of Choice website, and you could learn a lot more. And I think that you'll find it to be very useful. And, you know, who knows, maybe you'll buy one book, maybe you'll buy more, maybe you won't buy it now. It may not be the right time, but maybe you'll feel something from it just going to the website. I know I do from just looking at the book. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank all our key people from the UN Staff Recreation Council Enlightenment Society, our International Day of Yoga Committee members, Dr. Kurt Johnson, special shout out to you. Sabita Gear, special shout out to you. Ann Williamson, special shout out to you. Reverend Z, Del Gao, always a pleasure to be dealing, you know, with us to support our UN, the greater UN community, and our beautiful world, our animal companions, and all of that. So as we go today, we go with God, we go with each other, we go to create a better world in our own sphere of influence. And let us pray that we all receive the blessings of this beautiful season of light that is upon us. And let us pray that 2021 is a better day for all of us, and that we can serve to continue to create this heaven on earth, to use someone else's words who started out this program before. As we like to close, we like to say, may peace prevail on earth. So may peace prevail on earth. Again, Paul Luftenager, as we say, may peace prevail on earth.
Prevail on earth.
We can all say it together. I've unmuted everybody. Let's do it.
May
peace
prevail
on earth.
on earth.
And so it is.
So it is.
So it is.